Burbage, and today I'll be talking about bypassing two-factor authentication with Android remote access Trojans. A little bit about myself. I'm a researcher at PhishMe, and one of my passions dealing with malware research is taking a look at those command and control infrastructure for malware, especially ones that utilize PHP panels. I really like finding vulnerabilities in those. Some of my hobbies include drumming and listening to music. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter or my work email there. Go over our agenda for today. So we'll talk about why miscreants are utilizing mobile rats for account takeover. Introduce three families. Talked about how they're spreading in the wild. Some previous campaign info. The different command and control infrastructure types. We'll also talk about some mitigations that organizations can implement to combat these threats. And finally, of course, what I like to talk about is the vulnerabilities of these malware families. First, a little disclaimer though, since we are talking about exploitation and proof of concepts, definitely don't want to try that at home unless you want to be visited by men in dark suits. And there might be some hostile URLs in my presentation, so definitely don't want to visit those on your mobile device. So why miscreants are using mobile remote access Trojans? Well, as financial institutions start to implement two-factor, no longer is account takeover solely relying on usernames and passwords. So they now need that one-time SMS PIN. So by infecting the device and also conducting a phishing campaign, the miscreant now has every piece of that pie for account takeover. One other issue that I've seen is that some of these FIs, they don't have an official Android application in the market. So you already have a user base that's used to going to third-party application stores looking for unofficial applications for their financial data, which is kind of bad. There's also a low entry point compared to modern PC man-in-the-browser malware. And the reason why they're so successful is that there's a lack of mobile antivirus adoption in the wild today. Kaspersky put out a recent report, I believe actually it was like early 2015, saying that 1 in 5 Android users encountered a mobile threat at least once in 2014. It's a really interesting threat, and really seeing that Android malware ecosystem evolve. Take you through the steps of a normal two-factor account takeover. So our evil miscreant here starts with a mouse spam campaign, phish. So our victim clicks on that, looks like the FI login that he's used to, and divulges his username and password that of course is sent back to the miscreant. Step 2 of a two-factor account takeover. So that phishing site has some sort of verbiage saying, well, you need to download our latest mobile application in order to be more secure. So the victim, downloads that and installs it on his mobile device. Then as that financial institution sends the SMS one-time PIN to that mobile device, since it is compromised, the miscreant then gets a copy of that. So now he has every piece of the pie for account takeover. So one way that miscreants are kind of duping users into installing these mobile rats is a process called binding. It's most of these are baked into the crimeware families that I'll talk about here in a minute. Essentially, you can use a binder to wrap a legitimate application with any type of Android malware. So definitely seeing that in the wild. Screenshot of another binder here. There are essentially two types of command and control infrastructure for mobile malware, pretty much the same that you see on the PC side for rats. I like to categorize these into two different avenues, one being Java C2 and the other being PHP or panels. So the first family we'll talk about is AndroRat, which is a Java C2, also known as SandroRat or DroidJack. And the second family is iBanking, which is PHP panel, and then finally Dendroid. So the Java C2 Most of these are going to be run off of residential ISP connections. So a lot of the C2 domains that you see will utilize some sort of dynamic DNS account, such as DynDNS, NoIP, DuckDNS, so on. These are generally run on PC, which begs the question, most of these crimeware kits, they've been released free online, some sort of leak. And, sometimes by doing that, the person that's releasing it for free might embed some sort of backdoor into that kit, which, can lead to OPSEC issues for a miscreant. And these are also highly flood susceptible. PHP, command and control, also known as panels in the underground vernacular. And one of the huge issues with this is that there's a lack of input validation in the PHP code itself, which leads, rise to PHP shell upload vulnerabilities, remote code execution, SQL injection, permanent cross-site scripting, so on and so forth. And these are also very susceptible to layer 7 flood attacks. Generally, these are hosted on compromised websites or toss-away VPS accounts. So the first family we'll get into is an example of a Java C2 family. First known as AndroRat and changed its name to SandroRat. And now it's available as DroidJack. In August of 2014, there was a active campaign, as you can see pictured right here, pertaining to be from Kaspersky, saying that you needed to install this mobile security application. So this was spammed out as an attachment, the malicious APK, targeted Polish financial institutions and also Germany via SMS or smishing attacks. So it was binded as a Kaspersky antivirus, and then for the Germany FIs, it was actually targeted as a Google Service Framework update. And there has been attribution for the author leading back to India. You can still buy it now on hackerforums.net or the official site, which is droidjack.net. Some of its features has full file manager, remote file manager, that capability, SMS interception, of course, for 2-factor bypassing, contacts grabbing, GPS tracking, record calls and audio. If you can imagine a remote ambient bug device, for someone's cell phone, and the same thing with video, remote spy cam. Screenshot here of the actual crimeware kit. Again, Java-based C2. Not only would this be able to generate the APK itself, but also acts as the server in which an infected device checks back in. All for the lifetime package price of $210. Whenever I take a look at this, I've been following these families for a while, so I always like to see, how many fresh samples are hitting VirusTotal. So utilizing VirusTotal intelligence last Monday, still several fresh samples still hitting VirusTotal, so still seen in the wild. So as I mentioned earlier, these are extremely susceptible. So in a lab situation, set up one of these servers, and just with a simple SYN flood, within the matter of a couple seconds, was able to really just crush this CPU. So yeah, it made it just completely unresponsive. All right, the second family that we'll get into is called iBanking. This is a PHP panel variety. This targeted financial institutions in 2013 and is still used today. This was famously used by the NeverQuest, also known as Voltrak crimeware crew. Voltrak being a man-in-the-browser crimeware for PC. Initially sold, this was between 4K and 5K US dollars. So a pretty high entry point, but more oriented towards the crimeware crews that you see utilizing that type of software. So the source code for this particular family was leaked in 2014, and of course, with any type of crimeware kit that's leaked, that of course spawns variants of that. As a good example, say Zeus browser exploit, or not browser exploit, but the actual crimeware family of Zeus, same issue, spawned several variants of that. Some of its features include capturing SMS, of course, and call lists, premium rate scans, incoming call redirects. So in the event that, I'm conducting a campaign with iBanking and do a couple of fraudulent transactions, if I have the bank calling that individual to verify that, well, I can just reroute that call to me to verify that transaction. I've seen that a couple times in campaigns. Record calls and mic again. So one unique feature, getting to more of like the crimeware end of things, is the anti-forensic capability. So this family has the ability to wipe all device data to prevent, forensics later on. Pictured right here is actually a web inject from a Vault-Track configuration that prompted the user to install a Facebook one-time password, or OTP. So this was actually a iBanking inject within Vault-Track. I believe that was about 3 months ago, so still utilized in the wild today. Still very prevalent. Again, looking at the fresh samples that hit Virus Total Intelligence last Monday. So with that source code leak that I mentioned in February of 2014, a researcher pulled down the panel named Xylitol and found an unrestricted file upload vulnerability. Pictured down at the bottom here is the actual admin screenshot. So less GUI for this one. You could see that this wasn't really marketed towards your average rat noob user. This was more set up solely with crimeware intent, not only with the features, but with the backend code for that. But the crazy thing about it, even though that this has been publicly disclosed, people still use this malware family with the vulnerable panel in the wild. Going over the proof of concept here. So the sendfile.php file included in the crimeware kit in the panel source code itself. What this was intended for was any ambient audio samples that were being uploaded to the malware C2 from a compromised device was being accepted from the sendfile.php, and it drops it into the sound directory. So there's virtually no upload restrictions at all. So you can upload, a PHP backdoor shell, as I've done here in this example in a lab, and then, accessing that shell within the sound directory /shell.php. All right, so the last family we'll talk about is another PHP panel family. This is called Dendroid. March of 2014, CERT India published several warnings targeting financial institutions and the government sector over there. Originally sold for $300 on hack forums, and still being sold today. You may have heard about this recently in the news, in that the Dark Ode hacking forum bust. The particular author was busted within this roundup, and turns out he was an intern at FireEye working on none other than mobile malware. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's the guy pictured right there. So some of the features for this, and this is probably the most feature-rich mobile rat that I've seen. Definitely geared towards more of your more noobish actor. Records calls and mic, intercept text messages, of course, access call logs, call phone numbers, open web pages. You can probably think of some sort of social engineering campaign that you might be able to get that. Remote support scams, perhaps, comes to mind. Exfil and upload files. One unique feature, it actually has a built-in denial of service client. So, any mobile or compromised mobile device, you can have that send a denial of service HTTP flood. One other unique feature is the cred harvester. So I believe it was like WhatsApp and Skype, some of those other well-known IM tools, being able to scrape the credentials out of those, send that back to the C2. Still very prevalent, probably the most prevalent out of all the three families. Still highly utilized in the wild today. Screenshot of the C2 is kind of whitewashed out because this was actually a screenshot within their marketing material. But very feature rich, as you can see, and definitely geared towards more of a noobish actor. Main reason being is, very flashy GUI, Google Map overlay of, your compromised devices so you can track them real time in GPS. Really cool features, but the amount of time that they worked on their front end, HTML and JS, they completely didn't even bother with the back end PHP code. So this panel was actually source leaked. So not only the panel, but also the actual APK generation, August 2014, and still available on GitHub. So immediately pulled down that panel that weekend, discovered a remote code execution vulnerability, among others, including SQL injection and permanent cross-site. So essentially how it works, the apply settings.php file, it writes any code to config.php. So by sending a specially crafted post request to apply settings.php, that is then written to the config.php file. So with subsequent requests to config.php, you have remote code execution. So one other issue too with that is that it completely zeroes out the config.php file, and it's very noisy, but it also completely renders that panel interoperable, right? Because with other, config.php files like as CMS like WordPress or something, it no longer has credentials to check in with the database and doesn't know how to log in users and whatnot. So yeah, completely denial of service the panel as well. So by injecting PHP into this config.php file, in the previous example, I just passed the get parameter of C into a system function, and then we have remote command execution by passing that in, having that echo out the username that Apache is running. All right, we'll talk a little bit about the mitigation of this, starting to wrap up here a little bit. Wanted to leave some time for questions. So as an organization, you definitely want to monitor the official and the unofficial application repositories for your brand, especially any type of spam or DMARC feeds that you might be able to get. Realize too that by implementing 2Factor, if your organization's thinking about moving that area, that increases your mobile attacks. One thing that I have seen that some organizations are doing, instead of relying on SMS for that one-time PIN, they actually have their own authenticator app. I think that's a pretty cool idea. So not relying on SMS, at least it makes it a little bit harder in that in the event that a device is compromised, that it's able to receive SMS messages, at least that's out of band within its own application. So that's a pretty cool idea, I think. It's definitely time, to educate our user base more. Especially with the dangers of utilizing third-party application stores. And so what I've seen too is that it's not so much of a problem here in the States. It's mainly overseas, in that some devices, or most of them actually, they actually ship without the official Google Play or App Store app. They're already used to utilizing third-party application stores. So that is that's something that they're already doing, which is an issue. Definitely want to have them report suspicious activity. And of course, one thing that I failed to mention earlier is that all of these Trojans that I recently went over is that it does not require any type of root or jailbroken permissions. These are all, once the user is duped into installing this, whenever that's going through the installation process, this request for the installation is pretty much every developer API request under the sun. So it's a pretty big red flag that you'll see whenever installing these Trojans, is that it requests every permission. So with that, I believe that remote access Trojans require a very high level of social engineering. That's pretty much it for my presentation for now. Do I have any questions, concerns? Bitches, gripes, moans, complaints? Yes, sir. Yeah. Right. It would be the initial download, I believe, for that APK. So they would have to have the device configured. What I have seen is that, there are strict instructions that you have to allow third-party apps. Generally within the phishing campaign itself will have, instructions. You have to allow applications to be installed outside of the App Store, right? Third-party install. So that's step one. Then you have to download the APK. And then from there, during the installation, you have to approve all of the permissions that rat requests. So these don't utilize any type of, OS level exploit or anything. It's just all what's available to the developer API. Good question, though. Thank you. Any others? Yes, sir.
You showed that OS manual action.
Yeah.
And the iBanking.
Okay.
How often do you find that these guys are running Apache as a root?
Not that I'm actively engaged in looking at every panel, but I would say most of them are. I rarely see Windows, utilizing LAMP stack or WAMP stack, I guess. Yeah, most of the web, at least from what I've seen, PHP runs on like 80% of websites or something like that. So, yeah, I believe most of them would be utilizing some type of LAMP stack. Had another hand over here? Yes. Yeah, that was it's definitely one way to mitigate that threat, I think. So yeah, what I have seen with some financial institutions, they'll have their own banking application that accepts that one-time authenticator. Is that where you were going with that, or?
I'm saying that you might not. The application doesn't have requests SMS. They just use our application to get the SMS out.
Oh, okay. So yeah, some other type of out-of-band authentication other than, or utilizing some other type of messaging medium other than SMS. Yeah, that's I think that's the way to go. Definitely. Yeah. Question in the back there? Not currently. I know there's recently some stuff that came out. So apparently overseas in China, it's really hard to download Xcode, the IDE for iOS, and apparently some people Trojanized that. And there has been some rumors or some research that came out that said that had some ties to financial, account takeover for those. But I haven't had a chance to play with that yet. For Windows? No, I'm sorry. Hey, Windows Phone's pretty secure, right? Yeah. No one's targeting that at least, right? Yeah. Maybe you can still get 08067 on them. I don't know. Any other question, guys?